girls on stage. Hopefully this will be an inclusive discussion, not too heated, with differences of opinions. I found all the talks fascinating. As a young British Bangladeshi third generation myself, I've been to so many of these flashy weddings. In fact, my cousin just got married 2 weeks ago, and it was just so extravagant. I mean, her dress, the flowers, our shoes that she selected, our sort of detail in our outfits, which cost a lot of money, and we can never wear again because she chose red and gold. Because traditionally South Asian brides wear red, so you can't turn up and try to get up to or steal the bride's thunder. So I have a few questions, but before we start with that, I'm going to bring in the audience as well, so if you prepare your questions for me. I want to start with yourself, because I believe you didn't have a chance to...
No, I wasn't listening today.
Yeah. So you have about 5 minutes to give us a brief sort of summary of what it is you're looking at.
So my name is Sufiya, Ahmed, and I'm the author of this book, The Secrets of the BENGAL, which is a fiction book about forced marriage. We decided that I wasn't going to speak today because Dr. Nazia was going to do such a bad job herself that there wasn't really much left over for me to talk about, so I said that I'd take part in the panel. My background was, before I wrote this book, I used to work in the Houses of Parliament for a very long time. I was political staff for the Labour Party, and during the 10 years working there, I came across women, Asian women, in their 30s and early 40s who were campaigning for forced marriages illegally. And we're looking for better support from the politicians so that the police could be trained. There'd be better awareness and education, in education as well. And I became absolutely fascinated by this small campaign group. One of them was one that you've probably heard of, was Jasvinder Sanghera, who wrote the book Shame. There was also Shaheen Taj, who runs the Henna Foundation in Cardiff, and she does amazing work with victims. So really, it was just, listening to them and thinking to myself that I could write a book about this. And I met a friend of mine, you might have heard of him, his name is Nazir Afzal, who used to be the one of the director of prosecutions at the CPS. And, I said, can you introduce me to someone who might be, I want to ghostwrite their story. And he said to me, forget adult fiction. There are so many books out there that women survivors have written about. What you need to do is you need to write something for the teenage market, because if you want to raise awareness, you have to go down to the girls that could possibly be the victims of forced marriages. They are the ones that need to be told about it, to be more aware of it. So I thought, yeah, okay, why not? And then I just wrote it. I just thought, okay, I can write a young adult book, fiction. And I wrote it while I was working in the press office at the Labour Party, and at the time Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. So for those of you old enough to remember who Gordon Brown was, it was quite a stressful time working as a press officer to a man who did... Is this being recorded? Yeah, Labour Party. It was quite stressful working in the Labour Party at the time before we lost in 2010. But anyway... and I got the book deal with Penguin Books just as we lost the election. So I thought to myself, 10 years, it's time to get out, do my own thing. So I wrote the book. The book got published, and what I have done since then is I visit schools on average twice a week around the country, and I do author visits, and I talk about the book, but it's about forced marriage, it's a topical issue, and we raise awareness of it in that way. So that's what I do.
Okay, thank you. Why do you think young teenagers need to be made aware of forced marriages? Do you think it's still happening with teenagers?
Well, according to the Forced Marriage Unit, every year around sort of August, in the summertime, the call centre numbers go up. And those are just the ones that are brave and courageous enough to ask for help. I think it is there. I think in certain communities, today we've heard about how parents are becoming more possessive over their children. Somebody mentioned the whole grooming with the grooming aspect. They don't want their daughters. They want to marry them off, so they don't have that responsibility of if they become extreme in any way. So I think it's there. I think some communities are better because remember, although we're Asian, we're not just one group. You know, we're Bangladeshi, we're Pakistani, Kashmiri, Indian Muslim, you know, so many different types. And I think it's different in all communities.
I think one question I have for the whole everyone sitting here is, why do you think forced marriage has been associated with South Asians, but also specifically with South Asian Muslims? Because why is it we forget that this can also happen with the Sikh community or even the Hindu community? Because I feel that, particularly with Prevent now as well, a lot of the focus is on Muslims. So why do you think this narrative, and how has this narrative come about? So whoever wants to go for it.
Well, it's because when you think of it, I mean, it happens, you know, it's very high in the Sikh community as well. If you look at the sort of the Pakistan, it's a Punjabi thing. If you look at that section, so it's happening to Sikh Punjabis, it's happening to Pakistani Punjabis. It's patriarchy at its height. You know, it's real control. And of course, the other thing is the Pakistani community in this country is the largest that we have. They do number the most. I think Bangladesh has come second. Indian Muslims are lower down. It's that they are the largest group. You know, it happens in the Arab communities, but they don't feature that. You know, their number is not that high. So it's just, you know, the community with the highest population seem to have more of it. It's just proportion.
What about yourself? In your work, have you come across non-Muslim South Asians who come forward discussing issues that you've raised regarding some of your clients?
I mean, the forced marriage tends to happen with people who are more vulnerable in life. So socioeconomically, if you have very little power or financial control, you're more vulnerable. If you're somebody who is very young, a minor, then if there's a certain family conditions, you're more likely to experience forced marriage, because actually you have less of that power and authority with which to argue your case. If you have less education, if you have a learning disability, if there's anything like that, then I guess forced marriage, it's easy. That's a condition under which forced marriage can actually occur. If you have very little access to support, forced marriage is more likely. So even if there's parents trying to force a young person to get married, if they have access to support and adults that they feel comfortable talking to, for example, teachers, youth workers, those people can actually prevent it. They can at least act as a deterrent. So I think in any community, forced marriages can happen. But if you think about families where they are socioeconomically, they're at a disadvantage, which often can happen in Bangladeshi and Pakistani families. If you think about financially, what position they're in contrast with other communities. So I think it can happen, but actually it just depends on the context.
Yeah, I think well, from a professional point of view, you know, as a photographer, it's not something, you know, it's something I can say I've done a wedding where clearly it's evidence that the couple are forced marriage. That it's absurd, basically, in that sense. But from the points you're making about the media, it's a case of when it comes to issues which are faith related or culture related, and if Islam is like a bogeyman in that sense, they'll be more than happy, as in some of the leading, source of media, to try and make it out as an issue to do with Islam or making an issue to do with Muslim countries, when, as we know, it's not. It's just that cultural hotspots which, transcends all backgrounds. And although it was a joke, it wasn't even funny, but, it happens in Western cultures and aristocracies and all sorts, basically, potentially. Yeah.
Salam?
I think Rooful's pretty much said it there, man. I mean, the reason why it's because it sells papers. It's easier to sell. It's easier to demonise one community that's already demonised. It's easy to latch on and jump on that bandwagon, I suppose. On a personal level, I have never encountered anyone who's been forced into marriage. I mean, to be honest with you, if I had, I would have stopped it. If I had an inkling that somebody's been, I don't give a shit. I'd just wade in there, middle of the ceremony, and just break it up. That's me. My views on forced marriage are really well known in that respect. I don't agree with it at all.
What I've come across more is coerced marriages. That's certainly more prevalent and common from my perspective, where there isn't a legal issue. There isn't a capacity to consent issue. If there is a clear capacity to consent issue, i.e. someone's a minor, i.e. they have a learning disability, where legally you can go in and argue the forced marriage case. If parents and families and communities have coerced a young person who's 18 or 19 or 25 or 30, whoever, but it doesn't matter about the age, if they've been coerced into getting married and blackmailed and it's harder to argue the case that they are experiencing forced marriage. If they make a decision to get married based on pressure, it's then hard to argue actually they've been forced to get married because they've made that decision, and everyone has the right to make those decisions.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I feel like I have come across female Muslims who do this. It's not forced marriage, but it's through coercion, sort of social factors of wanting to get pregnant so they can't sort of have children out of wedlock, because of sort of cultural pressure. You've hit 30, you've hit sort of the so-called expiry age. No one will marry you. Sorry?
Shelf life.
Yeah, shelf life. So I have personally come across
There's a
people
young
who've done
woman
this.
I have been involved with who experienced huge amounts of stresses and pressure from family to literally, she could use the word, marry anyone with a pulse. Literally anyone would do, anyone who can impregnate her, essentially. And she was a highly educated, really articulate, beautiful young woman, but there were some issues which made her less attractive from a Bangladeshi perspective. And actually she was really, really pressured and still continues to be pressured. And she might be one of those women who just resigns to marriage. I call it a sort of resignation to marital life. And she might just decide, okay, I'll marry the next person with a pulse. Or she might choose not to. So it's that choice that she makes. She might decide to get married and she might be very unhappy. New Asian Women's Project published a report quite a few years ago where they found that, where they did a study of young women, I think they were aged between 16 to 35, who were self-harming. And one of the highest predictor of self-harming was remaining in unhappy marriages, whether they were forced or coerced or love or whatever. Just that pressure to remain in that marriage was the highest contributor to those who were self-harming.
One thing that I found that I hoped it would come up during the talks is the issue of shadism, colorism. In fact, a lot of your wedding pictures, the bride is never dark. The groom is usually darker than the bride, which is a massive issue in the South Asian community. And yes, I am bringing it up because it is an issue I have been confronted with. So I want to know if, for example, in your work, if that is something that has also a stressor caused for particularly women, because, I mean, I found that with Bangladeshi men, it's compensated by their education or compensated by how much they earn. Not in all cases, but most of the time I feel with men they're a lot more lenient. Whereas with women, you know, whether you're educated, you're earning more than the man, your skin tone can hold you back. So
I think I tend to see people on the severe end of the spectrum with severe mental health problems, so personality disorder, psychosis, men who are paedophiles, men who are rapists, murderers, and so on. And so it's right at the other extreme of mental health distress and emotion. But if we talk about mild anxiety and mild depression, certainly I've come across cases where people's anxiety and depression level has generally been affected by the way they see themselves. Body dysmorphic disorder is something where someone sees their body in a very distorted way. So they could be highly attractive, but they see themselves in a really negative light. And if from the community they are experiencing negative appraisals about their looks and their appearance, whether it's height, skin tone, anything else, that's obviously going to feed into that real anxiety and real dislike for their appearance.
Salam, do you want to talk about some of your experiences at both Selector?
What, shadism? Yeah. Shadism? I mean, it's right. I have some really, really strong opinions on this. One of the determining factors when it came to selecting brides was skin colour. Personally, I think it's really, really just... There are no kids in the room, right? It's really messed up. It's a really messed up attitude to have. It's based on a 200-year-old idea that fair is lovely and white is right. Yeah? Ironically enough, before the British invaded Bangladesh, the concept of beauty was dark. So dark skin was considered more, you know. British came along. Sorry guys, no offense. Right? British came along and
Scottish, so.
you ever watch that South African comedian? How he does his British thing. Yeah? Okay. British came along and introduced the umbrella, the concept of being comfortable enough to not have to work out in the sun. And then this new concept of white is fair and dark is not as good was born. We did a campaign about 3 months ago called Dark is Just as Beautiful. We stuck a hashtag on it as well. And we ended up shooting about, I think it was 12 beautiful women, dark-skinned women. Because we were running short of models, my wife jumped in as well. She was dark-skinned, so she had no choice. Like either you do it or I'll divorce you, you know. But yeah, so and then we got the message out there. We did this video, we did daily posts. I mean, social media was huge on this as well. So it is literally about changing the mindset of some of the men. And it's not even so much the men, it's the families. They watch these crappy nut-off things, you know, these drama series on Star Plus all day long. And the brides are all, you know, they're all fair and all got this white powder on their face. They look like China dolls. And they all want something that resembles that. They don't want dark. Dark is considered the help, the servants, menial. You know, she could be hideous and fair, and she could be gorgeous. She could be absolutely stunning and dark skinned, and they wouldn't look at her twice. So we came across this quite a lot, and I used to get really, really uppity about it. I'm like, look, you know what? Remove yourself from my services, please. I do not wish to serve you. I do not wish you as a client if you're going to have a mentality like that. I don't wish for backward people. I'm trying to educate my people and bring them forward. I don't need prehistoric dinosaurs like you. So I literally, the brides would turn up, the family would turn up. I mean, I can tell you really loads of stories, extreme stories. Yeah, we love you, you know, on paper you're great, but, oh my God, are you that dark? Don't call us, we'll call you, yeah? Bride's sister, don't come out, yeah? She's fairer than the bride. Don't come out when we have the guests around because they'll look at you and they'll reject your sister. Stuff like this, it's really, I mean, there are bigger issues in the world than worrying about your skin colour and stuff, you know? And I personally think what makes a woman beautiful, I'm a man, I'm a heterosexual man, so I can only look at women in that way. I can't look at men in that way, right? So I think what makes a woman beautiful is her happiness, is her smile. If a woman is happy, she's smiling, she's beautiful to look at. And it shows. What doesn't make her beautiful is her fair or her dark skin. And then we need to drum this into the heads of some of our younger generation who have been influenced by the older generation, who are still living in that kind of that channel, what is it, Star Plus dream, you know? I can go on for about this for ages, seriously. It's really, really annoying.
Sophia, do you want to add anything to this?
I appreciate the...
Sorry, we're going to open it up.
Sophia,
Sophia, if you had anything to say.
I'm not sure what to add after that. I mean, obviously it's wrong. It's just, I mean, the media has a lot to do with it. I mean, even, you know, if you look at the British white community, it's all about the thin women. You know, we've got all these eating disorders. It's just that I don't know what to say after what you've just said.
Yeah, sorry, I'm really, really passionate about this thing.
No, I was going to say, in terms of from my perspective as a photographer, you know, I'll be honest actually, you know, I hopefully would have seen, for those who were here earlier on, the photographs, they're pretty much, you know, relatively not retouched, if that makes sense, that the integrity of the original photos maintained, because I really want to show the beauty of the natural couple. Whereas sadly, and I'll be honest actually, you know, this is me talking about the wedding industry, all the leading magazines, you know who they are. There's clearly 3-4 titles which dominate the shelves. They are available in not just the communities. Can I finish? Sorry. They're in Tesco's and what have you, and the leading supermarkets. Front cover, literally all the adverts. Almost like the inverted commas, fair and lovely applied from a retouching point of view. So it's almost selling something which is just saying, oh yes, to be inverted commas, a beautiful bride, you almost have to fit this, like Sufi's mentioned about the thinness and what have you. So that's the first thing about media. And the second thing, if we can laugh at ourselves as a humanity level, so this taking a big picture, isn't it ironic and silly? We live in a society where people who are fair-skinned, they want to be darker through suntan, and those who are dark, they'll apply makeup, desperately trying to be fair and lovely.
Absolutely.
People should be happy with themselves, and let's celebrate the diversity. We joke about 50 shades of black, but 50 shades of brown, you know.
You know, I was in India a few years ago, and I ran out of moisturiser, and I just went to a chemist in Mumbai, and every single moisturiser, I mean, and these were, you know, the big brands that were there, had skin whitening product in it. And my skin's sensitive, so I have to be really careful about what I put on. And I was just like, I don't want these. Even the Dove, even the L'Oreal, they've all got products for the Arab and Indian market, and every single, you know, skin product has skin whitening ingredients.
I heard a story about a bride who...
Sorry, we've only got 15 minutes left.
Okay. I heard
very quickly.
I heard a story about a bride who went to... she went to actually get her makeup done in Bangladesh. She went to get married in Bangladesh, and they literally made her 3 shades lighter. And this is in a public sort of beauty salon. But she didn't even ask for it. They just automatically assumed, okay, it's your wedding day. We're gonna whiten you up.
But this fairness thing, even with makeup artists, British South Asian makeup artists, they usually don't tend to carry the darker foundations because their brides tend to demand 3, 4, 5 shades lighter. So when I was contacting a few makeup artists for my cousin's wedding about 3 weeks ago, I had to request that, can you please make sure you bring your darker shades, because I will not pay you if you make me an inch lighter than I am. But one other thing I want to move on before I open it up to the audience is, I submitted my PhD just under a month ago, and though I don't look at marriage, it did come up during my research when I interviewed people across East London. And I remember one particular woman, when I interviewed her, and she told me she got married at the age of 16. And again, under false pretenses that her husband is a doctor and so on and so forth. And 16 years they've been married, and he is still in the same profession, which is in the catering industry. And it's simply because they wanted to get her married. And when I interviewed her, one of the things she said to me is, one of the best achievements my dad has made in his life is getting all his daughters married before the age of 20. So for her, it was an achievement that her dad got the 5 of them sisters married before the age of 20. So I think what I'm essentially asking is, why is marriage still seen as an achievement and not just something, another sort of phase in your life, another moment in your life, rather than an achievement like, you know, getting a degree or getting, passing your driving test or something along those lines? So why do you think it's still perceived as an achievement in the Asian community or any other community?
Well, the Asian community is patriarchal, so the marriage is a transfer of the female member from the father to the husband, and that's just it. The parents feel that they have to, they have to transfer ownership to this family, and until they've done that, they've let the daughter down, or they've let the family honour down. I did some voluntary work in the Greek island Lesbos earlier this year with the refugee crisis, and the number of child brides, really young, girls that were married off, Syrian, because the parents felt that if I die, I can't look after you. You'll be trafficked, you'll be raped, all sorts of awful things. Best thing I can do is marry you off to another Syrian or Iraqi, from the camps. At least then you have a protector. And this comes from the patriarchy of the Asian culture, the Arab culture, the North African culture. And until we move away from the patriarchy, we're just going to go round and round in circles on the same thing. It's about ownership. When I wrote this book, I had a big discussion with my editor when I said, I need it to be authentic. I need it to be about a young girl. Fair enough, she begins as a victim, but it's about how she stands up for herself and how she decides that she wants to live on her own terms. And I said, you are Penguin, and you can't allow your stereotypes into my book. And my editor was like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't want it to be a BBC 2 or Channel 4 story which is about, the Asian girl is saved by the white guy, by a friend, she runs away with this guy and then everything's hunky-dory. It's about her standing up for herself in her own way, no transfer of ownership. And my editor got that, and then, when we went to the copy editing, it was a long process and other people were involved in it, they make suggestions, stereotypical opinions come in. But my editor, who has the full control, was like, no, it's about an empowered girl. That's what we're aiming for, not about transfer of ownership. So you can even see how from the dominant, British white community, the way they look at our community, it's about these girls need saving. Yeah. It's like Afghanistan, the whole campaign, the war in Afghanistan was about saving the Afghan woman from the burqa. It was nothing about that. That was just PR.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Dr. Sidrah? The concept of seeing marriage as an achievement, is that something you've come across?
I suppose I have. I guess it's the age as well, the generational beliefs. If the parents believe that getting my daughters married off by a certain age is me fulfilling my duties as a Muslim, as a parent, then that's, for them it's really important to be able to do that. And if we think again from a survival perspective, those same parents are the same parents who've come from post-civil war Bangladesh, where women were actually highly under threat, where actually the institution of marriage provided some kind of protection for women. And actually even now we live in a world where there's a lot of lack of safety for a lot of women. And in many cases marriage does allow that kind of woman to feel a bit more protected under those conditions. So I guess what I've seen also is actually when that belief system carries on without that necessarily risk that we have here. We don't necessarily have the same war-related risks here in Britain. But psychologically, those same parents are carrying that anxiety and as a result acting on it by feeling they still need to get their girls married.
And Rooful, do you think with these lavish weddings that's also a way you're sort of asserting this achievement, do you think?
I think it's an element, I've alluded earlier on about the community talks irrespective. So I think that's what it is. So the community talk, imagine, for example, that your son or daughter isn't married. The community talk, if they married someone of a different background anyway, so they'll talk no matter what, basically. So I think that you've just got to literally close your ears, close your eyes, and just proceed with life, I think.
And Salam, do you think marriage is still seen as an achievement from your experience of both selector?
From my achievements as a matchmaker, if we can get a couple married, that's a bloody good achievement. Seriously.
Should we leave it at that?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so we've got about 10 minutes for the audience.
5 minutes. We've only got 5 minutes, unfortunately. Yeah.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay, 8 minutes.
Compromise.
Okay, I've got my phone on. Okay, 8 minutes. Anyone want to ask any questions to any of the speakers? Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm struck by what you were saying about talking about Fair and Lovely and Star Plus and all of these. I mean, obviously they do perpetuate.
Me or
you?
Me. Yeah. Okay. All right.
You especially, but it seems there was a consensus that these are to blame, but actually these ideas predate it. Quite considerably. I mean, they it's an onslaught because it's constantly in every break. It's Fair and Lovely, so it doesn't help. But the idea of fair is preferable has been going on for a very long time. It actually predates even British involvement in the subcontinent. So, so it's maybe it's Aryan origins. I don't know, but I think I guess what I'm saying is we have to take our own responsibility for our kind of belief systems, because sometimes I have questioned people. People will say to their family members, will say, "Oh, even though you're even as a they'll say kalame as a black girl. They don't mean black girl in the sense they would here. They'll say, but you're really pretty." And I question people, and the thing is, they don't see that as me questioning that. They see that as me attacking Bangla culture because I live in London. And so I think it's actually our problem, further perpetuated by the advertising onslaught. But I don't think the advertising onslaught didn't start it.
No.
It's us.
No.
Really.
I think so. Charles Darwin's problem, this idea of
No, I think it predates.
Blue blonde eye, blue hair.
I actually.
No, I mean, with shadism, it also goes back to, Hinduism 5,000 years ago. If you look at Hindu legends, if you look at the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, a lot of the evil gods are depicted as dark-skinned, who are defeated by the fair-skinned gods. So if you go to Indian temples, even now during Navratri, the gods that are worshipped right now as we're speaking are the fair-skinned gods, who defeated the dark-skinned gods or goddesses. In fact, in Bengal, Kali's very powerful. But I think in this sense, in the religious sense, her powers compensate for the fact that she's referred to as the Black Mother. But it definitely predates, I would say, colonialism. And I wouldn't say it's related to Charles Darwin, particularly in the context of South Asia. Unfortunately...
Sorry, just a quick question.
Can we just have someone respond from the panel, actually, to...
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned India and, the dramas. Shah Rukh Khan did a Fair and Lovely advert about a year ago, and there was a backlash from women's groups. So, people are reacting to it, responding to it. And I don't know whether, they pulled the ads or not, but then, if Shah Rukh Khan is going to do a Fair and Lovely ad, then...
Well, Shah Rukh Khan pretty much endorsed
He's a very famous
Fair and Handsome, so it's for the men.
Can I just add something? When I was in Bangladesh last time round, I went to a village, a very tiny little village, and I've got 3 cousins there. 2 of them are very fair-skinned, very similar to yourself, and one is, I would say, Sidrah's colour. I said to the youngest one, naturally, the youngest one's the dark one. I said to her, you know what, out of all 3 of you, I think you're the prettiest. As you do, regardless of what colour she is. The other 2 looked at me like, but she's dark. Yeah. And I just thought, you know what, oh man. Initially I was going to challenge it, And when I thought, you know what, they genuinely believe this.
No, they do.
They genuinely believe that this is how they've been raised. It's in their brain. Yeah, go on, Ivan.
Yeah.
As a black girl, just
Okay, if we can just move on, yep.
I just want to point out that this argument is just going a bit one-sided. What about bringing it back to this country and the ladies here, what about the concept of like the woman's preference, like especially in Australia maybe, like what are they preferring? The 6 foot tall guys with the degrees or like PhDs? Is that an issue as well? Where,
You mean the skin colour thing?
No, the guys. I'm talking about the woman's preference now.
No, but you're talking about the skin regarding skin.
Yeah.
But you're talking about regarding skin colour or just general?
Sorry, no, it's a different question. It's in terms of
Acha.
woman's preference to guys.
Okay,
like
well, I mean, in an ideal world, man, they all want princes who ride stallion, unicorns and
do we?
yeah, and stuff. Yeah, I'm generalising. I would say that a large proportion of the women that we had on the books, their demands were reasonable, but some of them were really, really unrealistic. Yeah, and that's what I think.
I think I have a theory for this. Do you think it's because within the Asian community, if you're going to go for arranged marriage, you haven't really done the dating thing, so you're not really aware of what you can pull, basically, what you can attract.
Yes,
so you think to yourself, I can have that because I just can, and you don't realise that actually you have to look at yourself and you have to look at your compatibility, your own attraction to a certain type. And that's the problem with arranged marriages, because you think my mum and dad can get that for me.
The problem is people don't know themselves very well. Often when they're looking to get married, they don't understand themselves. They don't understand historically what chronologically, developmentally, what's happened to them that made them who they are. If I could just finish. If they don't understand themselves, it's going to be very hard for them to find a marriage partner who's suitable for them. So they can go by things like how tall they are, how fair and dark they are, how much money they earn, hoping somehow that those sort of attributes will make them happy and somehow they'll find that dream person.
We've just got 2 minutes left. If we can have
The question over behind.
there and then. So we're going to take the last 2 questions.
I completely agree with Dr. Sidrah. My question is, can you define marriage? What is marriage within the community? Is it a constitution of religion, or is it cultural norms and values? What is it?
Is it for anyone specific?
Anyone.
I don't think we have a consensus. That's the truth. We don't have a consensus in terms of being a Bangladeshi man. You defined it really nicely according to what a lot of elderly people would say.
We have 4 different answers for you. That's the bottom line.
I think we've got some other people who want to.
Yeah, if I can just get... Okay, yeah, go on.
No, thanks very much for your presentation. Very intriguing and thought-provoking. I guess what's next in terms of next steps? It feels like we're obviously, in terms of the audience and the panelists, we're talking amongst ourselves. In terms of, Ahmed put a really good event. How can we perhaps in the future explore? How do we draw in the kind of community centres, the community leaders? I guess some of the mosques, so that there could be a little bit more education about this agenda. What other practical things can you suggest, propose? It was touched on slightly by 1 or 2 of the speakers. So what's next? Can we have another half day where I guess people of further influence in the community can be drawn together, and actually there could be much more education taking place than I guess talking to a group of small professionals here maybe. So,
and I guess that's for Ahmed.
Yeah. Is there another project for him there?
Yeah. Can I just quickly, we've just got 1 minute left, if I could just respond. One of the things I think as a young British Bangladeshi woman is that, first of all, we also need to challenge our parents, because a lot of people in my generation, they're not willing to challenge their parents. So I'm having to sit in their houses, listening to the parents in front of me saying things about dark-skinned women, educated men, educated women, educated this, or not educated enough, or doesn't earn this salary. And as you may know, many Bangladeshis from a particular generation quite openly ask you, what salary, what are you earning? Is it above 30, 40? And I feel those are things that I think people in my age, in their 20s, looking to get married, should definitely challenge, whether it's, shadism, whether it's looking at the concept of masculinity, I think, is something that also needs to be challenged. Anti-blackness in the community, particularly if you're looking to marry outside of the South Asian community, because it doesn't tend to be an issue if you're a Bangladeshi woman wanting to marry a white man. So I think a lot of these things need to be addressed within our own homes, with our relatives, with our cousins, with our parents, which I think is particularly very uncomfortable for young Bangladeshis. But I think you need to sit down with your parents and have some serious conversations about various issues to do with marriage and just breaking those things down for them.
Generalised,
Yeah.
I guess. There's an awkward line.
I didn't hear what you said, but